Request everyone to please keep their mics on mute. Thank you. Paresh sir, over to you.
A very good evening to one and all. I welcome all of you to this roundtable conference at CASI. And before we begin, let me give you a small brief on why this was planned. So, I have a banking background and I was introduced to the world of CSR and sustainability when I was in New York around 10 years back. So I found it so interesting that I said everybody should study CSR and sustainability. So let me
Nine.
so let me start an institute where I teach only CSR and sustainability. And that is how I started CASI in New York around 9-10 years back. And I have been a hardcore banker. So I was the managing director of a Swiss bank, the full-time director and the CEO. So 16, 17 years of banking, and suddenly I found myself in love with the concept of CSR and sustainability. So I started this institute, and then really nobody wanted to study CSR and sustainability. So I didn't know what to do, and I wanted to get it done. So I said, let me sugarcoat it, and let me teach finance, marketing, HR, digital, whatever you want to study. And in that, 30 marks will be reserved for CSR and sustainability. And उसमें तो आपको पास होना पड़ेगा if you want the certificate. And the idea caught on, and today we are present in 52 countries. We are the world's largest online education company dedicated to CSR and sustainability. And that is how CASI began. And few years back, we said, let's do Shramdan. Work for the country, no politics, no religion, any cause. So invite all the children to work, and Paresh uncle will give you the certificate. So in the first few emails, yes, actually, my name is referred as Paresh uncle because I sent the first few emails to all my friends and their children that I want to start a volunteering platform. So please do some volunteering, 1 hour. In one entire year, do 1 hour, and I will give you a certificate. So and they're my friends' children, so they call me uncle. So that is how volunteering started with us. In 3 years' time, we are today the world's largest volunteering platform with over 3 million volunteers in India alone. And this was not by design, this was by default. I believe people want to do good. So we only need to give them an opportunity, a chance, a direction. Because if 3 million students in 3 years' time have joined this platform by default, then we are surrounded by a lot of good people. And all my students, all these children, we work very closely on different causes. So that's our story. And I like to understand point of view, opinion of different people. And that is how this seminar started in September. So we were working on our regular education, investment banking and volunteering businesses. And I talk to a lot of people. So my problem is I don't sleep. So then I have a lot of time, and I have a lot of friends overseas. So I'm usually in conversation with people. So I was talking to people, and they said so many things about sustainability that did not make sense to me. So I said, if everybody has a very different opinion, then let us start a platform, a canvas where, what's your angle? So everybody has a different angle. Nobody is wrong. Everybody is adding value. And that is how these seminars started. So today, this is an exciting seminar. I'm personally very excited to be here. We have amazing dignitaries today and an amazing, equally amazing audience. We have the keynote speaker, Manisha Verma ma'am, IAS officer. She is the managing director of Maharashtra Film Cultural Development Corporation. We have Malini Shankar ma'am, IAS officer, very senior IAS officer, and she is the board member INFS. We have Hanif Qureshi, IPS. We have Yasir Ahmad, partner of Swadesh, and we have Dr. Anil Kumar, the CHRO, Magic Bricks. We also have some amazing audience. We have people from Uzbekistan, we have people from Italy, Germany, Stock Exchange of Trinidad and Tobago will be joining us in the next few minutes. I just had a talk with her. We have people from halfway around the world, and we have some amazing people talking. And we have a young hedge fund manager, Jaisal from New York. We have a very close friend of mine, Patrick, a Swedish gentleman based in China. So I'll repeat, based in China, working on the oil pollution and you working on water displacement issues created by the Chinese government. And he's a close friend of mine, Patrick. So it is an amazing audience. I would like to start by welcoming Manisha ma'am to start with the keynote speech. Ma'am, you are on mute.
A very good evening to all of you. Professor Paresh Sheth, esteemed panelists, Malini Shankar ma'am, Dr. Qureshi, Dr. Mangesh, Dr. Mishra, Yasir and Jasrita, and all the friends who are joining online from India and abroad. I'm indeed honored and delighted to be a part of this conversation. Frankly, I thought I was not the right choice for this keynote, as unlike most of you, I do not have any experience of aligning business strategy or CSR as a corporate leader. But as a public servant, our business is to do social good. My business has been serving, thinking, dreaming, and strategizing for institution building, policies for public good and community empowerment. This is what I have lived, dreamt, and invested myself completely in last 27 years. I draw my inspiration and sense of purpose from by believing that I'm making a difference to create a more fair and equitable societies. And I'm helping to create, in my own humble way, some opportunities for those who are not privileged by birth. In that sense, and a very limited sense, perhaps I may qualify to be part of this august group. I would just like to make few points here. In my view, sustainability implies something that sustains or lasts. So it is something to be seen not as a short-term game, but a long-term perspective. Seen from this sense and seen this way, I would say that sustainability should be viewed in terms of effect of companies' business on society and environment in the long run. There is another way of looking at it, whether a company can manage to sustain its profits in the long run without caring for its societal impact. As you know today, the discourse has shifted from looking at just the total shareholders' revenue, TSR, to looking at TSI, which is the total societal impact. The old school of thought that believed that government is for development alone and the task of business is to just earn profits for its shareholders no longer holds good. The choice between sustainability and profit is now erroneous and false. In the long run, one has to recognize that economies cannot thrive without building social capital. Businesses can only flourish in a world where the society and citizens are educated, healthy, productive, gainfully employed, and they have the purchasing power to enjoy both goods and services. Can companies then really stay aloof from their contribution to societal good and especially in a country like ours, disparities and challenges of poverty, illiteracy, nutrition, homelessness, unemployment, and climate change, to just name a few. If you see, India ranks a dismal 117 out of 166 countries in SDGs. We are even behind Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. We are 103rd on Global Hunger Index of IFPRI. Our poor quality of education is revealed by a report which shows that our class 5 children lack the reading or arithmetic skill of class 2. Our chambers of commerce are always lamenting the fact that the degree holders do not have adequate employable skills. 12 out of 15 world's most polluted cities are in India, and we are creating a solid waste of 1 lakh tons daily. So can businesses hope to flourish without being partners in solving these societal and environmental problems is the question. As per data with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, between 2014 and 2018, companies have nearly spent 52,000 crores under CSR. Clearly, this is not enough. CSR is not designed to scale, especially in times of economic downturn. We do have corporates like Tata's who spend nearly 4% of their net profits on CSR. But on the other hand, we hear stories that companies still channelize funds to their families, friends, or cell-phone foundations. Friends, over years, the concept of CSR has evolved then from philanthropy to value creation and shared values. Today, we are here talking not just of CSR alone, but also aligning the entire business strategies, the product design, manufacturing, supply chain, distribution as a whole with sustainability. And then it makes a lot of business sense. If you've gone through and looked at the work of Bhattacharya and Shankar Sen, who have written on leveraging CSR, it shows that social responsibility today is a driver of market approaches. Their studies show that employees are no longer interested in just the paychecks. They would like to feel good as a good corporate citizen. They would align with companies who have sustainability as a core value. And such companies have better talent retention, productivity, and growth. There is also now a change in consumer behavior. Consumers are interested in knowing just not about the product, but where it is sourced from. And there is commensurate investor movement towards social good in addition to just profits. Today, data reveals that companies who do better on TSI perform better both on margins and valuations, be it oil, gas, biopharma, consumer goods, or financing. However, companies need to complement this effort with appropriate communication strategy for their stakeholders. I think there's also a case for developing sophisticated tools to measure social impact, which is currently not being captured just by balance sheets and accounting alone. Some work was done by ISB in the past in terms of social impact bonds and guarantees, but I'm not sure whether their effectiveness has been empirically established. I do believe that there's no shortcut except hard work and sincerity of purpose for the companies to really reap rewards based on stakeholders' perspectives. Because creating a credible narrative for triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit will certainly take time. It is imperative thus to align both CSR and business strategies to develop a cohesive approach so that the companies can reap their rewards. One great example of a win-win approach that I feel is of creating shared values is Amul. Amul has built milk cooperatives of millions of small producers with quality standards and professional management. Their diversified products today sell both in domestic and foreign market. And another good example is Wipro and the work being done by Azim Premji Foundation to build the school education and its quality across the country. I recently came across an interesting example of Airbnb, which has used innovation to use their platform to connect with NGOs and hosts to provide free housing for disaster-affected people and refugees. There was another example of Standard Bank in South Africa, who used the government regulation of using 0.2% of their profits to small and medium enterprises. Instead of giving direct donations, they invested in an independent trust and used the funds to support the entrepreneurs. Most companies today like Sanofi, Mahindra, Tata, L&T and several more take skill development programs that provide employable workforce to the industry. Companies are also increasingly investing in their R&Ds to reduce carbon footprints. It is just not the corporates alone, but governments too, I feel, that need to seriously work towards sustainability principles, whether in urban space or rural areas. There is a considerable scope of knowledge and business partnerships with corporate and expert organizations. I could share a few examples where we created partnerships in tribal department in the state of Maharashtra with for-profit needs in my last partnership helped us to render better services with more efficiency and creating shared value. For instance, we partnered with BVG and Amya Life to provide medical services to over 1 lakh tribal students through 24/7 well-equipped ambulances and team of doctors. All health data was digitized, and there has been regular screening of the students and the villagers, as well as health awareness interventions. We have been able to save several lives which would have got lost due to cancer and heart problems without timely diagnosis in these remote areas. We partnered with Tata Trust to set up state-of-art central kitchens to provide hot-cooked, nutritious meals to thousands of tribal children with operational efficiency, profit margins, and professional management. Similar partnerships were also tried to promote value addition and processing of minor forest produce, an organization of tribal producers. We also did e-commerce and market linkages for tribal artists and artisans. Though we were from the social sector, as a department, we successfully participated in Magnetic Maharashtra and pitched successfully with the businesses to invest in tribal areas, in areas of agro-processing and ecotourism as sound business propositions and not for charity. We partnered with Karadipat to enable children to get better English speaking skills for higher professional education because English is a barrier. In partnership with another company, Transcend Adventures, we undertook an ambitious mission Shaurya for promoting adventure sports. In less than a year's rigorous training with professionals, our tribal youth managed to astonish the world. 11 tribal children over last 2 years from remote villages scaled Mount Everest, creating magic and inspiration to dream big. When I was at the Prime Minister's office, I was also involved in drafting policies and laws for right to education, right to work, National Food Security Act, skill development, organizing farmers, producer companies, and other such subjects to tackle deep problems of education, unemployment, poverty, and hunger in the long run. So from government angle too, I think building enabling ecosystems for innovative approaches to solve problems and aligning policy incentives and programs is at the heart of finding sustainable solutions. This approach alone can actually build a strong foundation for inclusive growth and social development. So friends, summing up, I would say let us leave this debate of profits versus sustainability. We all have to collaborate and align our ways of doing this in a manner that promotes growth with sustainability. I strongly believe that it is the ethical, innovative, and conscious business in the long run that is likely to grow and make sustainable profits in years to come. In the end, I would also like to make a moral appeal. We belong to a culture that has prided itself in seeing unity of all beings in the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It is a land where Gandhiji gave the unique concept of trusteeship, where the wealthiest are custodians of wealth and resources and not personal owners. And they are supposed to exercise this wealth and resources for larger public good. Our tribal communities and villages exemplify some of the finest traditions of simplicity, sustainability, and collaborative spirit in their daily lives. I think we should all build together on this unique cultural legacy and ethos. We do not own this planet. We are merely visitors here for a short while. Let us live wisely, responsibly, and ethically. We owe this to our future generations so they may inherit beautiful world from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manisha ma'am, for those so very nice words. I was making notes when you were talking. There are a few things which I can definitely use and learn. And taking a cue from you, I would like to add that we have a lot of volunteers, so we promote road safety for MMVD department and PWD department. So last year we lent 7.5 lakh volunteers on the same day at the same time. And we created a world record for PWD and MMVD departments. So the first time I worked with Tribal was with Manisha ma'am, and they sponsored the Model United Nations. So along with road safety, we are promoting international culture, policies, and politics. And Manisha ma'am was kind enough to send a batch of 30-40 students from Igatpuri to a Model United Nations. And that is when I first realized that this is also a cause I should work on. Manisha ma'am, really. So thanks to you, And today we have identified 2.5 lakh tribal girls studying at Jalgaon University. And we are doing a financial literacy program for all the 2.5 lakh girls from tribal background under Jalgaon University. And we are doing this absolutely free of cost to the university and free of cost to the tribal children. And my first work for tribal children was thanks to you.
Thank you
So
so
you
much.
introduced us to the tribal belt, and now we have taken it as a large cause. So 250,000 odd girls from the tribal background in Jalgaon belt alone will be trained in financial literacy this year, and we will take an exam also for free. So we were motivated by you. We never told you that. This platform, I think I should, tell you that you motivated us to work for Tribal.
Thank you so much. You continue your good work.
Thank you very much, ma'am. With those words, I would like to invite Malini ma'am. And Malini ma'am, please share your opinion on CSR, sustainability, and your angle. We are all very anxious to listen to you. Over to you, Malini ma'am.
Thank you so much, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are tuning in to this program. I will like to take off from where Manisha left, which is about the trustee. Now, the concept of social responsibility in India dates back millennia and actually finds mention in works such as Arthashastra as well as the Vedas. Atharva Veda, for instance, talks of, and I quote, procure wealth with 100 hands and distribute it with 1,000 hands. Very interesting how our ancestors have actually looked upon social responsibility. The 20th century in India saw the aspect of social responsibility move from the realm of volunteerism and charity to government mandated legislation, from a short-term viewpoint to a longer-term empower-based mandate. Modern India has witnessed the concept of CSR evolving through different phases, moving from an ethics-based model to a stakeholder-based model. The responsibility shifted. Originally, it was just the responsibility of the proprietor and manager of the company. And slowly in the early 20th century, it moved towards responsibility of manager, proprietor, and later on towards environmental factors, and finally the public in general. The current approach of CSR in the country can be best described as people with planet and profit. People with planet and profit is a good slogan. So India happens to be the first country to mandate in legislation, the aspect of corporate social responsibility. It envisages that 2% of the average net profit of the last 3 years are earmarked for CSR activities. And of course, this is applicable only to those companies with a turnover of a minimum of 1,000 crore rupees, a profit after tax of rupees 5 crore, or net worth of rupees 500 crore rupees. CSR activities in India have mainly focused on a few areas, which include education, health, gender equity and women's empowerment, environmental sustainability and climate change, and labor rights, particularly child labor and forced labor, as well as human rights. The benefits of CSR are understood by most entities in the corporate sector, which are briefly enhanced relationship with stakeholders, a happy workforce, developing a good reputation, increased influence in industry, differentiation from the competitor, increased customer retention, and winning new business. In implementing these activities, they are, however, met with a spectrum of challenges, which inter alia include shortfall in local capacities and capabilities, lack of well-organized NGOs, as also sometimes a lack of clear guidelines from the government itself concerning CSR. Companies are inclined to look upon CSR in India as a government mandated task, a compulsion, rather than a means of leveraging benefits for the business. The boards oftentimes contend that adopting and practicing CSR is a distraction from their core obligation, which is to act in the shareholders' best interests. Research findings suggest that these boards hold a very narrow view of their fiduciary duty, which is closer to the shareholder model than the stakeholder approach to corporate governance. In fact, the observation is that some family-owned business tend to be more proactive in their social responsibility, considering that they are giving back to their society, and usually this is their village or their community. In a larger non-family-owned company, there tends to be a rather narrow perception towards CSR. The outcomes remain theoretical as the company or the board views it as an expenditure and actually seeks a return on this investment. CSR activities in general have a very long gestation period if they are serious, as do most social enterprises. This contrasts obviously with short-term perspective focused on profitability. One of the most visible efforts in building brands through CSR, as far as I can recall, is that of Lifebuoy and the Washing Hands campaign. For several years running, India's Unilever ran one of the country's most successful social responsibility programs. The brilliance of this ongoing campaign lies in its simplicity, teaching a task that takes about 20 seconds. And the campaign was a sustained one. So much so, when the pandemic descended upon us, the reflex action for many of us was to just reach out for a Lifebuoy soap. Samsung, for example, has partnered with the Korea International Volunteer Organization, and this is reported to have. So it's a two-way equation where it is. These examples provide clues to setting a clear strategy for identifying, subsume the intended benefit for the community or for the environment. Some companies tend to view CSR as an unnecessary duty thrust upon them and consequently actually seek to find ways to circumvent the responsibility. There are instances of companies investing in NGOs floated by people close to the directors or the key management personnel. However good the activities of the NGO might be, this falls foul of the compliance required of corporate governance. In course of time, we've seen that the manager and sometimes the company acquire a negative reputation. We live today in a challenged ecosystem. Building trust between the company and the consumer is indispensable. Can the companies leverage CSR initiatives as a means of building trust and thereby building their business? I leave the August gathering with this question in mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Malini ma'am. Your concept of stakeholder and is absolutely clear. You have very high clarity of thought on the stakeholder and how they should be making profits. So that is, but that is expected. So I was expecting that from you, and that is amazing. So it is both ways really. Yeah, and the example that you gave on the Vedas is amazing. I will use it in a lot of my speeches. So I have penned it down, and I will definitely use the Vedas example, and I will send you a message कि मैम आज मैंने आपका example use किया है. So I will do that because it's my job to make speeches. And I am always waiting for some great examples which I can borrow. Yeah. So thank you very much for those words. Now I would like to welcome Hanif sir. Hanif sir. Yeah, Hanif sir, the Secretary of Renewable Energy. Hanif sir, IPS. Please tell us your opinion. And then I have a question also for you, sir. Yeah, so please share your point of view.
Thank you, Paresh. It's a pleasure to be a part of this meeting. And it's a pleasure listening to Manisha ma'am and Malini ma'am. And I echo their sentiments when they say that, we are probably do not have the first-hand experience of having a corporate knowledge of the CSR, but we are in the public service business. But as far as the topic which you have given us, aligning of business strategy with CSR is concerned, I think there is, we need not think about business strategy and CSR as separate things, because a good business strategy incorporates CSR. So it is, we just need to realize that how CSR will make a good business strategy. That is, we just need to realize that. Let me give you an example of the police department. See, policemen are also citizens. We are always crying that, yeah, we are also citizens. We also have rights. And in the same way, the citizens are also policemen in CVs. They are part-time policemen. So we have a responsibility to protect our families, our neighborhoods, neighborhood watch programs. All these things are there. If you look at certain examples of community security, you'll find that those communities are more secure where people are more aware, where people take some action, where people, including putting like burglar alarms or talking to their local administration, taking whatever action they can. If people are aware about it and they convert that awareness into certain bit of action, those communities are more secure. So it is in the interest of the police to partner with the communities and make them aware, and not make them their adversaries, but partner with them, coordinate with them, create synergies. So that is in the interest of the police. And wherever the police officers use this strategy, they are able to control crime, because they get the cooperation, the willing cooperation of people. I think similarly the strategy with companies. Just as companies would have certain section of the population as their clients, the entire population is our client. We have to win their support. We have to win their confidence. Similar situation with the companies. And I also believe that, I'm just reminded of this program which used to come when we were young. Carl Sagan used to talk about the universe. And he used to say that, human brain is so complex, its complexity can only be equated with the complexity of the universe. So we have lots of neurons, each connected to each other, and together they form certain patterns. And so we have planets and stars coalesced into solar systems, galaxies, and globular clusters. So there is a certain synergy, there is a certain something is going on between all these parts, and together they make up a system. I believe that the human society is like this structure. Humans, we make up families, families make up communities, and communities make societies. And we have a natural yearning to be members of groups, members of society. That is our natural yearning. Man is a social animal. We are happy when we connect to people. We are not happy alone. When we enrich these connections, that's when we get happiness. So how to make people happy? By making not only more connections, by making those connections deeper, richer. That's how we become happy. And the same line of thinking is applied to companies. When companies can make their clients happy, that is when mutual benefits occur. And to make customers happy is keep your personal and business life separate. My brain is one. I see both business and personal things from my one brain. So if a company is doing some CSR, is doing some giving cycles to girl students, or it is helping in education, or it is helping in anything else, that is being viewed by the society as one and the business strategy as two, but actually that's only one whole thing which is viewed by the society. That's one whole thing. And that's how your reputation is made. That's how people think about you. And if people think good about you, that's where your brand value comes from. That's where people would love you. And that's where they'll just go with you wherever you say. So you have to win the hearts of the people by incorporating a number of varied connections and enriching those connections. So, I feel that the way we talk about happiness with individuals is one of the ways which we talk in positive psychology, is through connections, is through meeting people. Same goes for companies. So the more connected we are, the more we understand each other's needs. In economy, we always talk about shortage of resources. And there is an excess of problems. But what are the problems? The key issue is not solving the problem, but first identifying where is the problem. So we are different. Every human being in the world is different. I want to work in education. Somebody else wants to work somewhere else. Everyone wants to work in their own field. So let the rich diversity of organizations select whatever problem they want to work on, whatever is their heart's desire, and take it from there. And that is when there will be no need to choose whether we want to do this particular CSR or that particular CSR. There is no need to choose that. We as individuals are different, and out of natural course of action, we will choose whatever suits best our interests. And expanding this to the whole country, we would have covered all fields. Just give the freedom to everyone to choose whatever they want to do. So these are the limited thoughts which came to my mind when I heard you, Paresh, saying that you have to share some things with me. So that's all from me, and thank you so much. I look forward to hearing the other friends what they have to say. Thank you so much.
Hanif sir, thank you very much. And when you started, the police are public too, and police are citizens too. Let me tell you what we were discussing right before this seminar. We were trying to understand, because this is a very closed this thing. We have not we don't allow audiences from everywhere. So this is a very closed. I know everybody one-on-one. And we work with these corporates, and that is why they are here. So we were trying to understand, me and Dr. Mitesh were trying to understand who will ask what question, what can go wrong, kya dikkat aayega, kind of thing. And then suddenly one of us said, okay, that Hanif sir has the toughest life. So we have to ask him, what is the civic sense, mein kya issue, what are the issues he faces because of the lack of civic sense in people. So because that is a constant thing which you keep on hearing about. And so we were actually discussing about, that police are people too, the line that you said, we were discussing something like that. Okay, he has to expect a lot of civic sense from the other party also, the counterparty. And that is where he must be facing a lot of difficulties. So, let's ask something like that to Hanif sir. And you started bang on. You started with that line. So that was amazing. That was too good.
Sure.
With that, we have the Manisha Varma ji, Malini ma'am, and Hanif sir giving us their opinion. Now I would like to bring in the four corporate big guns. The four people from the corporate side. the 4 people who actually handle CSR day in and day out. So they are in the middle of the action. So I would like to invite, the 4 big guns here today. Mangesh Wangne, the CEO of Swadesh, Yasir Ahmad, the partner in PwC, Jasrita Dher, the head of CSR brand and marketing at Fortis, and Anil Kumarji, the CHRO of Magic Bricks. So I would like to have a round table of these 4 big guns, and I would like to begin by asking all the 4, and they can select, any one of them can select to give this answer. What is your angle? So all the 4 of you come from different point of views. All the 4 of you are working within CSR, but for with different targets. The targets are different. A foundation, a consulting, a healthcare, and an online company. So targets are different. The cause is the same. The country is the same, and the policy is the same. So you really will have an angle behind you. So I invite all the 4 of you to tell us, tell the audience, what is your angle on CSR and sustainability? Please.
Sure. So, Professor Paresh, I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, you are.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So just as an introduction, as I go ahead, my name is Yasir Ahmad, and I am a partner in PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I lead the sustainability and climate change practice. So my point of view, and specifically from listening to everyone, very very insightful messages. But my point of view on this is to share my experience of working in this entire consulting field for the past decade and a half, and working with both the private sector, the government, the not-for-profit sector, the multilateral alike. And I think I've seen from that experience, 10 to 15 years back, when we used to have the conversations around sustainability or climate change, even CSR, because we all understand that CSR at that point in time was not mandatory, especially for the private sector. It was, for the PSUs, and subsequently there was entire regulation that got formulated, and now it is for even for the private sector, provided they fulfill the triggering criteria. 15 years back, 10, 12 years back, I should say, that when we used to have those conversations around sustainability, around CSR, around initiatives, climate and all of that, it used to be a very tough conversation, frankly, because at that point in time, people were just about realizing that yes, it is important, but the order of priority of things and the sequence of things, it was probably not the top 2 3 areas of concern. Cut to that now, and if you look at the developments in the last 4 or 5 years, and even before that, there has been a huge movement, and I think we have the local organizations which are really pushing for, in India, right from the plastic waste management, the waste management, and so on and so forth. CSR regulation itself, at that point in time, was India was one of the primary countries to come out with a regulation like that. Of course, now there have been others who have followed, but that was something that India was one of the first ones across the globe to really come out with a binding regulation on the CSR spend. So, with all that push from a local regulation perspective, globally, if you see, there has been a lot of realization by the companies that sustainability is not a good thing to do. It is a part of an essential business cycle. And the impacts of climate change, all of us are now seeing that those increased, weather or climate-induced disasters. As a matter of fact, just as an anecdotal example, in December 2019, there was the first climate regulation that got formulated, which was declared in US, of a public utility, power utility in California, which was impacted its assets and impacted due to forest 10 fires. So 15 years back or 10, 12 years back, I should say, that when news, which were attributed to the multiple years of drought that the region was faced. Of course, we all identify forest cover plus the loss of the moisture, making it vulnerable to the forest fires. So now we are in a situation, and I'm speaking strictly as someone who's been concerned and advising the private sector, the government, and all other segments of the market. I think right now there is a genuine realization that this is something which is an essential thing to do, and not as a matter of choice. Around initiatives, as we call it, on the balance sheet. So therefore, it should feature in the business strategy, discussions and the business strategies. And this one last point actually made original discussion and was also picked up by the eminent speakers, that this should come very as difficult for us as Indians. Because if you really look 20, 30 years back, traditionally we were actually wired like this to be very frugal, very conscious of using the I would say the products in our daily household, and that yes, it is important, but in the order of and how we are disposing them off. I think last, I would say, 2 decades, we kind of got pulled into this entire consumerism and got influenced in a not so positive way by the Western culture. But if you really scratch the top layers, we could really see that as Indians, traditionally, right from our Vedic teachings to even until recently our ways of living, we were actually quite sustainable. So one classic example that last year in the good old days when we could travel, so I was in Lisbon and in part of a circularity meet. I actually give this example that in India, where you have a car tire, when you use it up, you can go it for a process called retreading, wherein you can have additional rubber put on it. You can get the retreading done thrice, after which obviously it can't be done. Then that tire goes for the usage in the bullock carts in the rural sector, and then after which it goes for the manufacturing of the shoe soles. So I think that's something which, while everyone was smiling, and I was saying that now we are devising all those newer ways of calling it fancy terms like circularity and all, extremely important. I shouldn't be calling them fancy terms. But I think I just gave this example that leaving us untouched, this is what we were doing, a classic example of circularity in our own way in India. So my 2 bits to this is that as India, I think we are ready both from the private sector and as well as the seriousness from the government around sustainability, CSR and all these matters. There is a growing consciousness amongst consumers, the newer set of people, millennials, who are really asking for it, and we have those perception surveys and
Yes, sir. Sorry to interrupt you. Can't hear you. I think your connection is unstable. We cannot hear you.
It's stand the
Yeah, I also cannot hear him clearly from where I am.
board.
Same here. Maybe if he can switch off his video and try.
Dr. Mitesh,
start with someone else and come back to him later.
Yeah, that would be better.
Yes, sir. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I think there is some bit of a connection problem at my end. As Dr. Hanif Qureshi says, we can switch it to someone else, and I can, in the meanwhile, try and correct my connection. Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely. See, I would like to call.
Sorry, sir, you are on mute.
So,
I would like to call
Mangesh ji, give us in short a good spiel on what's your angle. Really don't tell us a long thing. मुझे angle बताओ. Angle क्या है? I really want to know your angle.
To the point.
Yeah. Angle तो 360 degree है. So our angle is 360 degree at Swadesh, and that is a very powerful way of looking at sustainability and CSR. Now, I'm not from corporate anymore. I spent almost 3 decades in corporates and now moved to Swadesh 4 years back. And let me start with two very interesting stories or examples which have occurred in recent past of this pandemic and lockdown. And then I'll come to very specific on this entire topic. So many of you would be aware of Nisarga cyclone which hit us western coast, and Raigad suffered maximum damage. And last week we had a very good Zoom meeting, our district collector at Raigad and a very enthusiastic, energetic lady, Ms. Nidhi, and Guardian Minister, and we were all discussing how things can be improved and whatever steps we already took. One thing which we observed, experienced, and shared with them, out of hundreds of water schemes which Swadesh has built in severely affected cyclone villages, only villages which continued without any disturbance drinking water supply for almost 2 to 3 weeks when government was struggling with electricity connection were those Swadesh water schemes which had solar connected power. And this we realized much more strongly, all the while we did it in last couple of years. But village after village, scheme after scheme, and district officials also said, something, this is what we find a sustainable work, what you have done. You did it last couple of years. Today, we are struggling to supply power, and villagers, 20 households, 50 households, small hamlets, they did not struggle for drinking water. So this is one thing. And second interesting story and experience which has happened in the last 4 months is our ability to implement one of the best programs of supplying horticulture plants, new orchard plants to 3,000 rural households in Raigad. Now, this particular program, the way it works, farmers have to make contribution of 50-20% of the cost, and remaining we support. Now, since our team of about 300 people could not visit villages, we were in dilemma how to go about it. But one of the things which now I'll come after the story, why I believe this 360 degree and sustainability comes. We built more than 1,000 village development committees, all connected with bank accounts in last 18 months. And when this pandemic lockdown started and we could not visit, we reached out to them either through phone, but almost 78% of these committees were connected through WhatsApp mobile connectivity. So we communicated about program. We kind of shared 2-3 minutes audio visual to train them on how to plant this crop. And then we told them, if you want to participate, you have to contribute, say 45 rupees per plant through your village development committee. And 3,000 farmers registered through their committee. We got their money, about 18 lakhs, and got about 89,000 plants booking. And when lockdown opens, unlockdown happened in July, August, we were able to supply these plants in time. So why I shared these two examples and stories which have happened in recent past, when I hear all the 3 senior officials from government, very interesting perspective which you get. We work very closely with government. And when Dr. Qureshi was saying about connecting, loving your community, and this is where the whole point is. Sustainability is not just in action, but also in thought. Whenever we design any program or any initiative, how it is going to be sustainable. And that is where 4E strategy, which we follow at Swadesh, that really is a very powerful concept. And again, Dr. Parish's effort about connecting with community people, a very relevant point. So our first E starts with precisely with that. Engage with your community, engage so that there is a mutual understanding of the problem and there is a trust with them. And this is the first step towards building the sustainability of thought and action. Second E is for empowerment. It is not that I come out and promote my brand as a corporate and give this as a freebie. That is transaction. I can give my product as sample, as a goodwill gesture. I can supply shoes, I can supply notebooks. These are all transactional for me. What is sustainability? For us, that empowerment is the second E, where community is able to participate in solution designing. They can feel power of designing and owning that solution. And for us, as an example, if we build an individual household toilet as part of Swades, it is not a community toilet. 25,000 twin pit toilet model we do. We have done 23,000 toilets. We don't give it for free. Each household has to contribute 5,000 rupees. Except for travel or widow or single women families, they have to contribute only 500 rupees. And that's where they feel they are part of the solution. Because if I'm not doing a right job, my vendor is not doing that toilet, that lady of the household demands, भाई ये काम ठीक नहीं हुआ है, आपने काम ठीक नहीं है, मैंने 5,000 रुपया दिया, अच्छा सा काम करो, otherwise मैं certificate नहीं दूंगी. So this is where in all our programs there is a community partition. Even drinking water scheme which I shared, they are part of the process, they contribute, and every month after we hand over the scheme, they contribute per month maintenance charge. And schemes for more than 12 years, 15 years, they're getting very good water supply even now. 200 liter per day, very good quality of water, better than in urban areas. And third E after engage and empower is execute. And that is where I think government, our all collaborators, either as a vendor partner or other NGOs, we ensure that there is a very good expert solution, which rural population may struggle. And it can be, if it is a tourism, I have to ensure a very good capacity building partner. Because sustainable solution will come if we go with a sustainable execution approach. There are so many very good work activities done by government. What happens after 2 years? We see it is very poor maintained water scheme or poor maintained school facilities or Anganwadis. Why it happens? Because first 2E, engage and empower, maybe that is something which we need to visit and question. And finally, the fourth E is exit. And that is for us is sustainability. We are here for a fixed duration as a foundation. We work for 5 to 7 years in a geography as a goal for that program. After that, I have to move out. And that is the real test of my sustainability. If community is able to own, and that's where village development committees become really powerful. And the examples which I shared of village development committee, we were so happy and so proud today that in those 514 villages from 3,000 farmers, we got the demand. Even if my team could not visit, work did not stop. And that is something which gives us confidence. That is the way to go. And our 4E model in that sense provides this holistic approach for development. Engage, empower, execute, and exit. So that is what Paresh Bhai, I think I would like to add at this stage, and maybe more later if there is any question. I hope I have been able to add
thank you very much, Mangesh ji. We have 2 more speakers, but we have a sharp finish in 10 odd minutes. So we have 4 minutes for Jasrita and 3 to 4 minutes for Anil ji. But I would like to specify Mangesh's point. I'll tell everybody what the angle is. Mangesh is an expert in making sure that the stakeholders are working on the CSR project along with the foundation. He does not allow the stakeholders to just be at ease and take a donation, we are giving a donation, so you can take a donation and you have an easy life. It doesn't work like that. So Mangesh is very, very sure when I do something, I want the stakeholders to be involved, and that is how stakeholders will finally own the project, and I can get out of the village and go to the next village and make it sustainable. So that is, I have had long conversations on Mangesh Bhai with this. We have a recording on YouTube from Mangesh, Jasrita, all the speakers, right? So Mangesh, this is something which you have with amazing clarity, that the stakeholders should be involved. They should finally own the project, and that is only how you get to go to the next village. So that your angle, it's a great angle. So over to you, Jasrita. Please tell us your angle on CSR.
Thank you, Paresh. I take a leaf from what I heard Ms. Burma and then Ms. Shankar talk about. Both of them have spoken about the lens, in a way, the prism or the lens that you should have for CSR. And that is from where my angle starts, that corporates and brands, organizations can look at CSR in very many ways. Okay, so you could look at CSR as compliance, because there is that 2% compliance that you have to do. And many organizations do look at it as compliance. While I would say to those organizations, we are leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. Okay, the old school of looking at CSR before 2014 was that this is charity. Okay, so as much as you do is enough, but charity, as we know, is not sustainable. So today, CSR, like the two ladies earlier said, has to be embedded as a part of your brand strategy. That's from where I wanted to start, and I was so glad that we heard it from two government sort of functionaries, because this is one thing on which I think if we represent the private sector and the public sector, then we see together. I see synergy in that. Moving forward from that, going a little bit sharper from the brand strategy, is that there are many heated debates, and there are many, articles that you will see, scholarly articles saying CSR should not be leveraged for PR. And my angle is entirely wrong. It should be. Okay, my angle is these silos need to break down. You need to do CSR for CSR. The intent has to be social good. The intent cannot be that I will get PR. This is an easy hook to get PR, and therefore I should do CSR. The intent has to be social good. The intent has to be CSR. But to spread the message, to spread the wings, to spread the good, all forms of earned media and public relations needs to be leveraged for it. So that really is my angle, that, please divorce here the intent and the purpose. The intent and the purpose is CSR, but it doesn't harm you to talk about it, because what is good PR? I mean, let's talk about it, good PR. The best PR is not where a company's agenda is pushed. That doesn't get you anything. Good PR is when there is a human interest story. Whenever there is a human interest story told. And when you talk about human interest stories of how many lives have been impacted by the kind of work that you've done, the kind of gratification that you derive from your work, that is good PR, and that in a way helps the CSR to get more wings, to get more strength, right? So that really is what my angle is. You've given me 4 minutes. I'll try and stick to it, okay? And I think I'm not even anywhere close to that. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the groups that I have been sort of impressed with. The Tata Group philosophy, again, that we heard from some of the speakers. What is different about the Tata Group philosophy? Everyone else says community is a stakeholder, like government is a stakeholder, investors are a stakeholder, employees are a stakeholder. Tata Groups from the very beginning said, community is not a stakeholder. Community is the one for which around everything functions. Community is the pivot. Community is the nucleus. That is what is different in their thinking, and that is why the kind of work that they do, and in different fields that we do, which is so stellar and which is so good for some of the organizations to sort of look up to, right? There is a Hurun report that I want to talk about, which some of you might know of. Hurun puts together a report of private philanthropy by organizations, by whoever it is, the promoter or family-run businesses, etc., who do far more than the 2%. If you look at last year's or this year's Hurun report, you will see Adar Poonawala from the Serum Institute. You will see Ronnie Screwvala from the Swadesh Foundation. You will see the Reddys of Reddy Laboratories, and you will see Dr. Yusuf Hamid from the Cipla Foundation, right? So these are people who are doing their 2%, far beyond their 2%, but in addition to that, they're also doing a lot of private philanthropy in the area of, whether it is water ATMs, or I don't need to go into Swadesh because we've already heard what they do. In the area of social good and in the area of sustainability. I think these are the stories that need more PR. These are the stories that need more earned media coming. These are the stories that we need to celebrate more in social media, and not just look at it from this lens that what is it that I am doing, right? And that this is where they've got such a good thing going. More corporates need to come and collaborate. It doesn't have to be, I have to start an initiative and it's mine. No, this is not a private clubhouse party. that's happening. There's already a good story going. Just add to it, give it more wings. That's the power of collaboration, which also we heard from some of the speakers. And finally, since healthcare has been at the forefront of fighting this pandemic, I feel Dr. Qureshi's pain. I definitely feel that, because like police, private healthcare also gets a very bad name. Okay, so we all painted with a broad black brush. They are all for profiteering and all of that. Every black cloud has a silver lining, and the silver lining of COVID-19 has been that the kind of work that private healthcare workers, including government healthcare workers, has diminished the line between private and government. All the healthcare workers, were at the forefront of fighting this pandemic much beyond their capacity. And what we have been doing is we've been running free mental health helpline in 16 Indian languages, just to give you an idea of how much of on the supply side, on the demand side, how much of demand is there. Earlier, this helpline pre-pandemic used to get some 250 to 300 calls in a week. Today, we receive about 300 plus calls in a day. So the phone lines are forever buzzing, because that is how much stress is out there in all the communities. This is in 16 Indian languages. We proliferated across all platforms, vernacular. So anyone who has a phone, not even a smartphone, a feature phone, and thanks to Geo Revolution, I think a whole lot of people might not have, other things on the Maslow's need hierarchy, but they do have free data, thankfully, can call up on this number. So we've been running these free workshops for government schools, for district schools, etc., where the schools have been shut, and a free helpline for whoever might need some help. And we know that India is a young nation, and in young nation, WHO tells us that suicide is the #1 cause of death in young people, and therefore suicide prevention is a very big area for us. And Fortis is forever trying to tie up with collaborations, whether it is TikTok, whether it is Instagram, whether it is Twitter, to try and make these rant or these so-called hate platforms, or not so safe platforms, safer for young people, and to, for our phone lines always to be open at any given point of the time of the day or year, that you will have somebody who's listening to you. You're not alone in this pandemic. We are in it together, and we'll figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jasrita. In fact, Jasrita's recording is also there on the Cassie New York channel on YouTube. And I would like to mention here that there are two things which I really like about her. One, she is the first CSR head to tell me that the brand strategy should, the brand strategy and the CSR strategy should revolve around each other. So a lot of people tell us that, corporate strategy should have CSR, and the CSR strategy should have corporate strategy. But she has been very specific about the brand strategy. She's running the Fortis brand amazingly. She's doing an amazing job. And the second thing, which is really cool, is your tie-up with Twitter, Jasrita. So she managed to have a tie-up between Fortis and Twitter, and they went into action, and millions of tweets were done for 2 hours regarding the mental health care and all. So which was an amazing program, and I think we can all learn from that. And we can always lean on Jasrita to help us out with something like that. Right. So that is something amazing, and that is a real angle. As I said, there is always an angle. Yeah. So it is an amazing angle. One thing before I go on to the last speaker, Anil Mishra ji, Yasir sir, Yashir Ahmad has been kind enough to come as a speaker for one of our other events also, as a keynote speaker for one of our other events in October. So I will send out a mail to each one of you, and you can also interact with Yasir in that event also as an audience, because he has plenty to offer. They do a lot of strategic inputs. They give a lot of strategic inputs to a lot of companies. We can really rely upon him and improve our understanding of CSR strategy. So with that, I go on to the last speaker of the day, Anil ji. Anil ji, you are the head of HR. So please tell us your angle from an HR point of view. And this is a closed room. What happens here stays here. So please tell us your angle from HR point of view.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Mithas, for having me here. I'm an HR practitioner. I do not have any angles, but I have plenty of observations. And probably I'll try and make those observations here. Just place it in front of you as very, very commonsensical observation. Number one, we talk about India has that demographic dividend, that benefit of lot many young people joining workforce. One observation as a practicing CHRO is, I think already Manisha ma'am touched upon this point, but the beauty is when you talk about young bunch of people, a specific generation of workforce, when you have 70% of them at your workplaces, now it becomes very, very important for us to understand what do they think, how do they think, what's their way of contributing back to society. Now here I'm not trying to stereotype anybody, but the mindset is they are not keen to cut a check and forget. And hence going back to original Mangesh 4 E's, I would add one more E, and the E here is experience. Now, if I have paid money, here the young bunch of people, they choose whether, my contribution is going for old age community, it is for, less privileged kids, or for what cause, and how can I bring a smile in their faces? How can I be party to the overall experience? So that is my first E, or rather, in the E order, this would be the fifth one. And the sixth one is the empathy piece. To me, I strongly believe as a practitioner, this is all about value. It's not about social, it's not about having that 2% discussion we have had so far, or it's not about brand. It's about bringing a mindset that, I'm part of the society. I have a moral obligation to give back to society. Yeah. Now, in corporates, how do you instill this value system? Values of, being compassionate, values of, being, communicating and engaging and being empathetic. So what we try to do is, typically every business organization would have their, functional objectives, and people like Dr. Norton and Dr. Kaplan, they formulated different concepts and models, and they said the overall business outcome typically got to be viewed from multiple angles. There is a people quadrant, there is a finance quadrant, there are other, growth aspects in place. But in organizations like Tesco or Fidelity or, in current system, if you really want to bring a change to the mindset of your colleagues, what you got to do is connect it with the entire employee life cycle. So what we are doing in corporate is the fifth element in the balance scorecard, we call it, it's a technical jargon, but we call it steering wheel. So typically what happens is every manager, every functional head would also be tracked, how they are instilling the value of giving back to society in their respective function. And it's completely delinked from the kind of paycheck or the mandatory provisions that we have. Yeah. So this is in addition to that. Now, for me, CSR is also about contributing your volunteering hours of services, right? Probably if you are in Mumbai, you're not doing something for probably branding, but in your individual capacity, or initiatives like Teach India. This is a voluntary activity where you go, you participate and take care of certain, underprivileged kids without any kind of a business agenda in mind. So to me, what is important is what needs to be done to create that kind of a mindset. What we can do as bureaucrats, as academicians, just to strengthen that kind of a value system in people is very important. Now, when it comes to corporate, we would try and link it to the overall, performance parameters through our steering wheel, through our balance scorecard modes, so that, everybody brings in that, mindset of, I'm part of the society. It's my moral obligation to give back to society. If that happens, then probably, world would be a better place for all of us. Now, since we have Dr. Hanif and Manisha ma'am and Malini ma'am on the call, my request would be, let's say, in police force, when you really want to give somebody some sort of a punishment, which might not be of a major nature, why don't we, just like any Western countries, why don't we allow them to probably, clean maybe the highways for about, 2 hours, for about, doing something. So can we, as a punitive measure, bring in some sort of a mindset change as a reformation strategy? So that, to me, would be the true contribution to CSR. This routine stuff is here to stay, and these are the fundamentals. But so long as we do not consider, and we do not right now, when we are talking about 70% of the young population, what needs to be done to change the mindset is very, very important. And that would be my circle. Definitely, I don't have any angles, and hence, that's my circle, in fact.
Thank you very much, Anil Kumarji, from the HR point of view. Saying you don't have an angle, and we are here to you are here to find one. With that, let's it has been an hour and a half. We come to the end of the program, but before that, I would like to ask Patrick and Malika if they have any questions. Malika and Patrick, do you have any questions? We have with us Sandy Deep. She also heads HR for KFC and Pizza Hut. We have my student from IIT Nimesh. We have Vedanta Lona. So if you have a question, please let us know, Patrick.
No questions. I just really enjoyed all the different views. I liked how a lot of the ideas were from bottom up, not too much focused on experts. Maybe bringing the experts in later on, I thought was really good. I think that's something that I like, that I agree with a lot. So very good content.
Thank you, Patrick. As mentioned before, all the 100 speakers in the month of September, we will be introducing them by the first week of October, so that you can reach out to each other and seek each other's help and do good or bigger good. Yeah. Malika, do you have any questions? Please let us know. Or anyone else, if you have a question.
Paresh, I have a question, but I don't want to, to make others wait. But if they don't mind, I have one question for all the speakers. First of all, thank you for the interesting presentation. It was really interesting to hear the different angles about India. My question is, when you look at the West, we can see that stakeholders are really, really strong. They have like strong power, and they demand accountability from the businesses, from the organizations, and etc. Can you say the same about India? How are the stakeholders in India? Do they have such a power?
Do any of our speakers want to take that question?
Okay, so let me give it a shot. In India, stakeholders are pretty powerful. In fact, shareholders in India are very powerful and are known to have overthrown management in quite a lot of cases. But as happens in a growing economy, it takes time. So if you look at the markets, if you look at the total market cap, if you look at the private equity structures, if you look at the legal frameworks, so all these have to be in place for stakeholders to be very, very active. So when you say activists and stakeholder activism, here and there we have a lot of stakeholders who are pretty strong. In villages, particularly, you can't go around building bridges and roads just like that now. So the government has put in a lot of regulations. The people at large are aware. So people at large would have very, very huge objections if you do something like that today in India. But having said that, the financial market is still developing. Shareholder activism from the shares ownership point of view is still developing. Legal is still developing. So yes, there is still time. I would say we are half a decade behind New York. So in New York it's easy, activism is faster, but because of the advent of internet and social media, activism has become very strong. So stakeholder activism is very strong today, especially because of social media and internet. So that is the scenario, right? So I'm sure in your young country you face the same. You are a very young country, and I was just telling you the other day we were discussing. You have the 5th, 6th, 7th largest reserves of gold, oil, and uranium, respectively. For a country which is as young as yours, and such a heap of uranium reserves, it really takes guts for someone like you, someone as young as you, to not indulge in trading of gas, oil, or gold, and form a company for CSR and sustainability. Other day also I told you I really appreciate what you are doing. And I just mentioned this for the benefit of all the other audiences, that Malika here is a close friend, and she is dedicated to CSR and sustainability in Uzbekistan, so which is really commendable. So and we are trying. Cassie is trying to do something big in Uzbekistan. So so that is where we are. I hope that answers your question.
So I just wanted to chip in, Paresh, on this is that Malika, in addition to, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. So in addition to what Mr. Paresh has clarified, there is also a legal regimen in terms of a Consumer Protection Act that we have in place in the country. So that actually is so every company or those who are providing services and goods, if there is a quality issue of in terms of services, then the citizens have a right to seek legal redressal, and there is a strong regimen of compensation. So that is very well entrenched in our Indian system. Also, there is a very big, network of grassroots advocacy organizations, NGOs, and also grassroots democratic local elected bodies, which are in place as units of self-governance, which actually are also have substantial powers. So what Mangesh was pointing out in terms of village development committees, I mean, there have been national legislations, and those bodies are pretty active. The communities have been mobilized by non-governmental organizations, even very proactively by government funding, and therefore they also are substantially powerful and act like checks and balance against any arbitrariness. So I think as a strong democracy, we do have these kind of legal safeguards, as well as these community-based organizations and our own elected bodies that serve to protect the interests. So some people might say, like what Mangesh was, Paresh was saying, that there might be delays in taking up some development projects, but they are also provide platforms for redressal of grievances and hearing alternative perspectives from people's viewpoint and the community. So that is what I wanted to add there. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Thank you very much, Manisha ma'am, for adding that. The NGOs and the local committees, they provide a very strong background to activism and doing the right thing. With that, let's end the program. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here. Malini ma'am, special thanks to you. Thank you very much for your time and your kind words.
Thank you.
Manisha ma'am, thank you very much. If you would like to end say something, please.
No, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for connecting all of us together on this platform.
Hanif sir.
Thank you, Paresh, for connecting with all the wonderful people. And with my limited views on CSR, I think I'm greatly educated by all these wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Malini ma'am, if you could say a few lines to end the program.
It's like Dr. Hanif says, it's always educative to hear others. I think it would be a good idea to take up on what Mr. Anil Kumar Mishra said. I've always wondered why punishment cannot be, instead of hard labor, it could be labor, something which contributes to the community. I think that requires not only a change in mindset, but perhaps a change in laws also. And I think, as Malika said, that's where the stakeholder comes in. A democracy is always a responsive government. It's in very few areas that it is proactive. It's very reactive, and it gives what the people want. And I think if there is a critical mass of people who look at that, and I really think that would not only, it's not in the interest of social responsibility alone, but I think it's in the interest of sense of belonging, protection of common property, a certain discipline that would develop. I wondered about this for the last 30 years. Occasionally you do come across some, local judge who does this, saying you go and, correct this road somewhere. You do come across, but that's an absolute outlier. I think it's worth working on that. Thank you.
Some issue with my net. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malini ma'am. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mangesh ji, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. See you next
Bye.
time.
Bye. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Goodbye.
Thanks, Paresh ji.
Thank you very much.